For 12 years, Adolf Hitler reigned as German Chancellor, leader of the Nazi Party, and his Third Reich. His legacy is one of vicious anti-Semitism, concentration camps, and mass extermination. Yet as World War II ended in Europe, it also ended on the Pacific Front with a divided Korean peninsula, the Soviets laying claim to the north and the United States to the south. A Korean War was inevitable, and it was a disaster. The stalemate ended in a bitter ceasefire that has divided the two countries not only politically, but culturally, a division that lasts to this day. In an attempt to keep the North a communist ally, a man named Kim Jong-il was chosen by the Soviets to lead what would become the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, a single-party totalitarian state whose leader's cruelty would far surpass that of Hitler and redefine the word dictator. Kim Jong-il is known by the world as Kim Il-sung, which means become the sun in Hangul. On page 240 of his 2,000-page autobiography, he says it was a name given to him by his adoring comrades as a child. Perhaps it's a bit of useless trivia, or one of the many fairy tales that seeded an internal culture of hero worship, and that has allowed the Kim dynasty, both father, son, and now his grandson, to execute its own Holocaust for 60 years. My interest in the mysterious hermit kingdom to the north stemmed from having twice lived in a little village in the south, only a few kilometers from the demilitarized zone. When you're issued gas masks for yourself and your children when you enter the country, it's only natural that one would be curious as to what's lurking in the north and why it still exists. You can only find answers by asking the right questions. For instance, how would the world have tolerated Hitler's atrocities if Germany had never invaded Poland? What if Hitler had continued along the path of his final solution, yet complying with the Treaty of Versailles? That could be what's playing out in North Korea today. As long as they keep the concentration camps hidden from all except Google Earth, which are also painstakingly mapped out on humanrights.gov, and as long as the number of prisoners who have escaped stays sufficiently marginal, the world can adopt a culture of passive acceptance. Passive acceptance of 60 years of torture and mass extermination of its own people. The Confucian idea of patriarchy has been a part of the Korean culture for hundreds of years. While democracy and capitalism have subdued it for the most part in the South, the concept remains in the North, and they are emotionally invested in their leader as a divine father figure. The propaganda machine works overtime to churn out the mythology of the Kim family, a surreal, false history of fairy tales and miracles as proof of their divinity, their superhuman exploits, and their intellectual genius. All of this parallels the much publicized executions of anyone accused of irreverence, as well as the quiet disappearance of entire families in the middle of the night, spirited away to concentration camps that don't exist, and subject to the very same brutality of Hitler's final solution. While the ever-porous Chinese border has opened the eyes of many in the North to some of the truth, their incentives to revolt from within remain few. Starvation in the North is not only a consequence of the failure of a command economy, but it's also a tactical strategy to keep the populace weak. The state-controlled media instills fear and warped knowledge of the reality of the outside world, convincing them that their country stands alone against the rest of the world. From within is also a culture of passive acceptance. To China, a Kim-led communist regime, no matter how vicious, is better than a unified Korean democracy. With its money, its resources, and its silent indifference, China continues to keep the regime afloat. From its only geographical ally, there exists a culture of passive acceptance. With the DMZ to the south and the inconquerable expanse of the Pacific Ocean to the east, at every geographical border lies a pervasive and defiant culture of passive acceptance. In 2013, the UN issued a 400-page report on the human rights violations in the DPRK, 400 pages acknowledging a totalitarian state guilty of every violation of human rights ever attributed to Hitler's Holocaust. And at the end of those 400 pages, the UN's ultimate recommendation was, quote, "The United Nations and the states that were parties to the Korean War should take steps to convene a high-level political conference." A political conference. While I don't claim to have any answers, envisioning the number of North Koreans who have died since I started speaking just a few minutes ago illustrates one thing: a shameful global culture of passive acceptance.